You're in the water loop.
Welcome to Waterloop, the podcast that explores solutions for sustainability and equity in water. I'm the host, Travis Loop. This is episode number 224, Accounting for Groundwater from Valley to Coast. California is grappling with a severe groundwater crisis, underscoring the urgent need for accurate accounting under the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. SGMA mandates that certain basins develop plans to achieve groundwater balance by 2040, ensuring that withdrawals do not exceed recharge rates. Various tools are being used or developed to tackle this challenge, ranging from field meters and well monitors to computer models and online platforms. This episode features conversations with Ann Hayden, Vice President of Climate Resilient Water Systems at the Environmental Defense Fund, Brad Samuelson, Managing Partner of Land and Water Solutions, and Brian Lockwood, General Manager of Pajaro Valley Water Management Agency. They discuss the pressures and solutions for groundwater accounting from the Central Valley to the Central Coast. Also features a demonstration of EDF's Groundwater Accounting Platform.
Yes, so the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act was passed in 2014 out of a recognition of significant overdraft occurring throughout California to the point where we have obvious signs of land sinking as a result. Canals being impacted, rivers running dry. So that, got to a real crisis point that led to the passage of this historic legislation. So that was 10 years ago. And in that time, I think there's been really important progress made in terms of these individual groundwater sustainability agencies forming throughout the valley. And because a central part of SGMA is that this is really based on local control. The locals drive the implementation of this program. And so it's on them to comply with it and to implement it successfully. We're at a kind of a critical point in time in implementing that program, in that some groundwater sustainability agencies have done better than others. Particularly, I would say, when it comes to having a real serious focus on not only supply augmentation. Of course, everyone wants to be able to get as much water into their subbasin opportunistically, when there's flood flows available, get it in there, get it underground through recharge basins. But at the same time, we have to be talking about demand reduction. There's going to have to be, reduction in groundwater pumping.
I sat down with Brad Samuelson of Land and Water Solutions on a farm in Merced to hear more about the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act and what it means from his perspective. Could you talk about SGMA, just the kind of the basics of what that is?
Yeah, Sustainable Groundwater Management Act was passed in 2014 and basically required every subbasin in California to be sustainable by 2040. The critically overdrafted subbasins by 2040, 2042 for the other less critical subbasins. Since that time, there's certain milestones that each subbasin has had to meet, forming GSAs, turning in a groundwater sustainability plan. So that's kind of where California has been the last year or two, is these subbasins turning in their plans and then being reviewed by DWR and either accepted or denied. So I work in several subbasins and have worked in basins that have been denied and approved. It's been spent millions of dollars on these documents, and the amount of time and effort, it's with lots and lots of work by lots of individuals on all sides, in all areas. It's just been a big push in California, in the Central Valley.
The idea of coming into balance, that's like a bank account, right? You want to be putting in as much as you're taking out, so you're keeping that nice steady level, so it's right. Sustainable, right? The water's sustainable, like your finances are sustainable.
And then the farming should be sustainable.
Right. Yeah. Groundwater challenges are also found on California's Central Coast, particularly in the Salinas Valley. I had the chance to talk with Brian Lockwood, General Manager of the Pajaro Valley Water Management Agency, about what the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act means for his entity in that area. The groundwater challenge has happened all across California, right, in all different areas. And so the state passed the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act 2014. Could you, in your words, explain what SGMA is and what it requires here in this area and of your organization?
Yeah, so SGMA requires us to achieve sustainable water resources. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And to be transparent about how we do it, to produce reports on an annual basis to show our progress. When SGMA was adopted in 2014, it required the formation of groundwater sustainability agencies throughout the state. In a lot of cases, those were new agencies. However, our agency was formed in 1984, and so we're celebrating our 40th year this year. As SGMA celebrates, I guess it's 10 years. We were actually one of a handful of agencies named in the legislation as being the groundwater management agency for this basin. So we didn't have to form a new agency. Instead, we were called out as being the agency to continue doing what we had been doing. So compared to new agencies that might have been formed around 2015, we already had a running start. We've been around for about 30 years at that point, and had developed plans over that period of time. We've had called them in the past basin management plans, although under SGMA's language, it's now groundwater sustainability plans. And we had already built projects by the time SGMA was turned into a law.
Under SGMA, are you one of the basins that has to kind of get into balance by 2040? Are you one of these high priority or medium priority basins?
Our basin is a critically overdrafted basin.
Okay.
So our deadline is 2040.
Yeah.
SGMA required that the newly formed and existing agencies develop their groundwater sustainability plans or provide an alternative to a groundwater sustainability plan. Because we had developed 3 basin management plans prior to SGMA becoming adopted. And the most recent plan that our agency, PV Water, developed got approved by the board of directors along with a programmatic environmental impact report in 2014 in the spring, just about 6 months before SGMA was signed into law. We submitted our existing documents as a groundwater sustainability plan alternative. And that ultimately got approved by the Department of Water Resources. In fact, we were the first and only critically overdrafted basin to submit an alternative and get it approved.
Back in Merced, I talked to Brad Samuelson about the tools that are being used to account for groundwater. He discussed the increased use of flow meters and well monitors, and also the reliance on computer models to understand what's happening.
The way that you would receive your water was just non-technical. It would be gravity fed. There's just not a lot of record keeping that's taken place. But even before SGMA, but especially since SGMA, at every level, at the GSP level down to the grower level, the numbers mean a lot more now. So I've seen at the farmer level, farmers with my clients, at first thing we do is we put a plan together to start tracking their groundwater levels and make a plan to get meters on everything. A lot of times it's cost prohibitive to do it all at once, but just slowly but surely get yourself so you're in a position that you know what's coming in and what's going out.
Yeah. I get the going out part, right? You can kind of measure what you're pumping.
Yeah.
That's easier, right? You've got a meter, you just measure how much water you're taking out. How do you measure what's going in, or how much is in the bank, if you will?
Well, that's what the GSP's telling us.
Okay.
What is the sustainable yield? That's the big number.
The models.
The models tell you, and it's fuzzy math, but in the Merced subbasin, it's going to come out to about an acre-foot and a half per acre.
Okay.
Plus or minus, no one knows.
Yeah.
That will hopefully come out in the next couple months. In the, Madera subbasin and Chowchilla subbasin, that's what it has come out to about.
Yeah.
So before the groundwater allocation, the farmers are typically in the white areas. These are folks without any surface water. They're pumping about 4 acre-feet per acre. and now they're going to be allowed to pump 2 or less.
And that is going to cause more land to be taken out of production, for them to look for ways to be hyper efficient with their water use, these kind of things.
All those things. And that's where the land repurposing is necessary. It's because the land is coming out anyways, so you might as well plan and do it cohesively with multiple benefits in mind.
I know that there's some efforts underway to develop tools, especially online tools, to be able to kind of do this groundwater accounting. We can talk about a couple. One of them is the Groundwater Accounting Platform that Environmental Defense Fund has developed. You've kind of, piloted that a little bit. Could you talk about it?
The ease of use of logging in, all of that's very important. I see that coming. I'm appreciative that EDF has had these pilot meetings where we're able to give feedback, and they're more than receptive. We've asked for things, and we've showed back up to the next meeting, and they've addressed it. So it's all positive. It's very early with EDF's version.
But it depends really. You're saying a big part is the quality of the data that's coming in. Like, how accurate is this in the first place, right?
Yeah, well, that's where it's hard for farmers to understand that they're going to be getting their groundwater tracked using remote sensing satellites. So their groundwater consumption is data coming from satellites with an algorithm. And I've looked at the data. There's different companies that are offering it. It's pretty darn accurate.
The Pajaro Valley Water Management Agency has been actually ahead of the game when it comes to accounting for groundwater. They've developed their own robust computer model and other tools that they use to track and plan. Brian shed some light on this process. So this model and this accounting of groundwater that you do, it's not something it's a process to run it and to pull this all together and to kind of really take stock of where you stand. That's why it's not like a continuous thing. It's on these kind of longer increments. Is that a fair way to describe it? to
update the model, say for 2 or 3 years worth of data, probably takes us 6 to 8 months worth of time. And a lot of that work gets supported by the United States Geological Survey. We've been working on this model every year since 2005, working to enhance it, make it better, and then use it to do projections, things like sea level rise projections or climate change projections, or what if everybody conserves 10% across the valley, and the conservation program that we run is both for home and garden sort of domestic users, but really it's focused on the agricultural users because agriculture uses about 85% of the water resources. It also provides a large part of the economy for our valley. So, there's a balance there, but we've focused a lot of the resources to that program. We were one of the first basins in the state of California to require private meters on private production wells. So the meters, which went into effect by an ordinance in 1993, allow us with a high degree of accuracy to measure the amount of water that's being extracted out of the groundwater basin. Other basins in the state that don't have meters, for instance, will use aerial imagery and estimates of how much water demand a crop has. An acre of strawberries maybe pumps 2 feet per acre of water, or uses 2 feet per acre of water. Apples, something different. Cotton or oranges, you can get it that way. You could also look at PG&E records, but because we've got meters on all the large wells in our valley, basically any well that pumps 10 acre feet or more, we have a very good understanding and a record of how much water is being pumped. And then those meters also there's a fee for pumping groundwater, the groundwater augmentation charge, which for every acre foot pumped, there's a fee that the growers or the city of Watsonville or any of the other water purveyors pay to the agency that helps fund the implementation of our projects, programs, management actions. So we have all the meter data. The model itself doesn't use the meter data. It uses various programs to evaluate the crop type and to estimate crop water demand, right? But then after we run the model, we can look at portions of the valley where we get an estimate from what the model predicts the water usage is, and then we can cross-check that with the actual amount of water that was pumped. And that helps us to calibrate the model, turn the knobs to get it as accurate as possible.
The Groundwater Accounting Platform was created to help track groundwater in California and ensure compliance with the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. It was created by the Environmental Defense Fund, the California Water Data Consortium, and some other partners. It's used by farmers and water managers to track and monitor and report groundwater use. I talked to Brian in Pajaro Valley and Ann at the EDF about this platform. These other GSAs out there that don't have the same kind of tools or measures, models, all that kind of thing. I know that there's an effort to kind of put something out there they can use, right? The California Water Data Consortium, Environmental Defense Fund, and others have kind of worked to try to develop this groundwater accounting platform. I know you all helped just to kind of demo it a little bit. Could you just talk about the importance of providing something that these other, entities can use?
With all these new agencies that are going to have to be formed, it would be great if there was sort of like a centralized system that could be used. So a database that we develop might be able to talk to a database that is developed by our neighbors to the north or south. Or, if you're Sacramento and you're responsible for tracking and providing accountability that every groundwater sustainability agency is achieving their goal, you might want to have everybody getting information the same way, right? Just one quick example of this is that PV Water is part of 3 counties: Santa Cruz, Monterey, and San Benito. Each county tracks their parcel data differently. So if we go and request parcel data from each county, we have to do a lot of work to bring it into our database to merge it all together. But with a little bit of thought, you could have the APNs, for instance, set up so that they could all merge nice and easily. That was kind of one of the early goals that came out of those talks around 2014. And flash forward several years, the California Water Data Center and the Environmental Defense Fund got grant funding to develop this water accounting platform. And similarly, there had been some other basins in the state that were considering mechanisms to achieve sustainability through water allocations. We haven't taken an allocation approach here in the Pajaro Valley because we've been able to continue providing water. Growers essentially are willing to fund the development of water supply projects to be able to continue pumping water necessary to bring their crops to production. We did get involved with the group, the CWDC, California Water Data Consortium, and the Environmental Defense Fund early on as a supporter. And we thought, we've got all of this data already that we collect through our meters and that we use with our model. And we were also interested in some of the work that the EDF and the consortium were doing with respect to estimating water usage through remote sense data. Things like evaluating evapotranspiration.
Yeah, that OpenET tool that they have. Yep.
So we were interested in that as well. We thought it'd be great to look at how much water does OpenET think a portion of the Pajaro Valley is using, compare that to how much water our model thinks we're using, and compare that to the meters which say, here's how much water is actually used.
Yeah.
So we thought there'd be a lot of great linkages here. So we've been part of that effort from the beginning and continue to participate. The database that's being developed is really well done, really nice. It's being developed so that water managers can get in and get access, but not just water managers, individual property owners will be able to get in, get access to their own parcels. So I think there's a lot of potential benefit that will come from it as it's continue to be refined. I know there's more pilot partners now. Each pilot partner comes in with a different set of needs and or requests, and so that helps to refine the tool that's being built. And I know there's more requests than I think there's time and funding to develop. So the team is then asking this steering committee to evaluate and rank, what are the highest need requests for the software developers to build. And then ultimately, I think the goal is that it could be, expanded and used statewide.
We've developed an online accounting platform that allows for those sorts of inputs to be factored into the accounting of the water that's being applied and used, but also the water that's been allocated. So it's basically a online checking account for farmers that they can access real time and give them a sense of where they are within their budget. They can then determine if they need to perhaps conserve a bit more, or if they have excess water, they may be able, depending on the groundwater basin, be able to sell that to other growers who are in need of that water. So it's really, it's a way to provide easily accessible information for farmers to make choices about how best to manage their water.
Is there a way to track water going in, that comes in through rainfall, that comes in through recharge basins or these other kind of projects?
So a little bit more tricky, but you just heard from Frank, like their groundwater basins that really this last year took advantage of where they could and tried to get as much water into the ground and infiltrate the groundwater basins. And they've been able to estimate the how much water actually, how much the elevation increased in their basin. Again,
this isn't just a California issue, right?
No.
Groundwater, I know it's huge in Arizona and New Mexico. And so is there use of this tool or this kind of measure happening in other states?
There's interest in using this sort of platform in Texas and Oregon and early conversations in New Mexico. And so we're starting, the whole intent around developing this platform in California was obviously to help growers in California, but also to recognize these issues are very much the same, certainly across the arid West and again globally. And so the need to have a consistent methodology and an easy way for farmers to be able to have this information at their fingertips is really, really important. And we think it can have a wide application in many, many places.
For this next segment, I get a demonstration of the Groundwater Accounting Platform from Noah Brewis at the Environmental Defense Fund. She shows some of the functionality and how this tool can be used.
The Groundwater Accounting Platform was designed to support the implementation of SGMA. So it's a tool that helps visualize and manage and track water budgets for both water managers and water users. And it looks a lot like a bank account where you have transactions that are credits and debits of water use. I'm logged in here as a landowner, and I'm in a demo geography. So you'll see on the right here, there's a card for the water accounts that I own within this demo geography. If I lived in a different specific agency or district, I would see their name labeled at the top here. So I can go in and view my water accounts. In this case, I have one fake water account in this demo geography called Rooster Run Farm. I can view details of that account. I can see at a glance my water budget. What is the total supply? How much have I used? And what is my balance? In this case, I've overused. I can see that in graph form as well, the red line being the allocated usage, the blue being what I have actually used, and the gray dotted line here is the average over the years on record. I can see what kinds of water my agency or district have allotted. And then I can drill down into further detail on the left menu here. So I can see very specific transactions of my account activity. In this case, we're using the product OpenET, which is a satellite remote sense product for evapotranspiration, to understand consumptive use. And then I can see kind of these inputs of native yield supply water, native yield supply and project water. So if I drill into one of these parcels, I can view it on a map. I can see how many acres it encompasses, and I can see both precipitation and usage on a chart here. I can also view projected allocations of water if my agency or district manager has set that up for me. And finally, I can see activity for this specific parcel, including usage through OpenET in this case, or supply.
Groundwater has always and will always be a foundational source of water for California. But as many of us know, they've overdrawn from that account over the years, and it's time to bring it into balance. As they work in the decades ahead to increase the water that's going underground, they're going to have to account for it and really track how they're doing. What's going in, what's coming out, and how can those aquifers be kept in balance?
You're in the water loop.